Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. Today, I have with me one of the really good, awesome people in our industry, Fred Gestwicki, who is the president of Fix It with Fred. In this podcast, Fred and I are going to discuss what it means to understand and be flexible with your technicians. But before we dive in, I want to tell you a little bit about Fred. Fred has been happily married for 14 years and has two incredible sons. Previously, he worked for 17 years as a dealership technician before opening his own shop 12 years ago in Canton, Ohio. Fred has a true passion for helping grow his team and assisting customers, and I'll add to that just really passionate about the industry, really wants to help this industry out. So I love my conversations with Fred. And if Fred does sound familiar to you, you've probably seen him on some of our other WrenchWay content, such as roundtables and events. We'll put some show notes, or we'll put a link to those in the show notes below. Go check them out if you haven't already. He's always entertaining, and it's an absolute pleasure to have with me today, Fred Gestwicki. How you doing, buddy?
Doing awesome this morning, Jay. How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm excited to get to talk to you. We always have really good conversations that I think are deep, right? Like you're one of the people in the industry that I'll call for advice and just maybe if I need to talk something out, like you're just a really good sounding board with a ton of good ideas. So this will be a fun one today.
Dude, thanks. Because like my wife is needs a sounding board, and I used to suck at it, and I have actually practiced being a better sounding board because I'm a fixer. You know what I mean? Like I just want to fix the problem, but sometimes hearing that problem from your own voice actually helps solve it a bit. So thanks, man. That's cool.
Yeah, it takes time to learn that skill. I feel like to truly listen and really have a good conversation.
Yeah,
So
man.
let's dive into your background. You've got a very successful shop, but I want to let's start at the beginning. Like, what was it about cars that made you want to get into this industry?
So I don't even know if you already know this, Jay, but I was going to be an electrical engineer. I wasn't going to be a mechanic at all. And at age 18, my ex-wife, when we were dating, her dad got transferred to Dayton Tire in Oklahoma City. I live by Firestone's home base in Ohio, in Akron, Ohio, and the production facility became a research and development center, and they stopped all the production people and pretty much fired everybody. They gave some of the executives options to move. So I was like, you know what? I'm graduating high school. I can move to Oklahoma City. So I literally moved to Oklahoma City. I lived there when the bomb happened. I lived there when the tornado
Wow.
happened. I was there for all that. And I get there and I'm like, I'm a grown up. I can do this. And I'm like, wait, I don't have a job. This isn't good. So I walked up one of the main streets and just applied at every business. I spent an entire day filling out applications, and Jiffy Lube called me. Jiffy Lube offered me a job. They're like, we need somebody bad. Like, can you start tomorrow? I was like, yeah. It's like, how much does it pay? And I mean, this is 1994, so it's like $5 an hour or $6 an hour. But gas was a dollar. So, yeah, I started with that, did oil changes for a while. And then I worked to another oil change company, and a guy that worked for a car lot got a job at a dealer, and had called me and was like, man, you should try this. Like, I think you'd be good at it. The guy's name was Jay Johnson, super good dude, and he's the reason that I work on cars. I said, I have no tools and no experience. He goes, just go to Sears and buy some tools and show up. You'll love it. And that's exactly what I did. I spent $400 on a mini mechanic set, two handheld toolboxes, and showed up at a dealership with no training, no experience, and just learned. And what I caught, this is where the bug came. I was right next to the service drive. So I could hear the customers talking. I could hear the customers telling the advisors what's up. And I noticed every customer had the same thing in common. Every single one. Life. Whatever your life entails, doesn't matter. Whatever you like to do, whatever you want to do, whatever you need to do. That car was an obstacle for them achieving what they wanted to achieve in life. And I was like, you know what? I want to learn how to help people's cars get them where they want to be, where they need to be, all those things where cars become the obstacle. I want to help keep the car from being an obstacle in people's lives. And that's what lit the fire for automotive for me, Jay.
That is really cool. I did not know that story. I One thing to pull out of that I think is really cool is that uh, I don't believe our industry was the way it is now back then. It was more you were lucky to have a job, right? It wasn't like people crawling all over trying to find people.
So in 1994, you would apply, and when you applied, because when I got a job at a dealer, the first dealer I was shoot in, but when I started to search, you could be sitting there waiting for the manager to finish an interview to do your interview, and there's another guy behind you, and you're like, man, like I got to really shine because I need this job. That was the phrase you don't hear. I needed the job. And in today's world, we need them more than they need us. Because if they don't want to work on cars, they can go get a job doing whatever they want because the world is hiring.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very the employees, the workers were the ones that were hungry. And in today's world, the companies are the ones that are hungry.
It changed a lot, and I feel like that's where we put ourselves in a tough position because we kind of sat on our heels a little bit as an industry because it used to be really easy to find people and now it's not. And I think we still have that mindset in a lot of cases where it's, we're stuck in the past and we think that it's just easy to find these people.
It, look at the world as a whole, okay? We're going to zoom out. We're going to look at big companies because those are our competitors. Companies like Google, companies like Target, and like Google, they have chill zones in their offices where if you want to take a nap, you can take a nap. Google knows they need their employees. Google, it wasn't in existence in the 90s. But when we go to a bigger company like Walmart, Walmart treats their employees different today than they did 30 years ago because they noticed the world of retail was changing. So they changed their staffing model, they changed their benefits, they changed their employment packages to match that. And with automotive, for the most part, the same way when cars were carbureted that we treated our teams is the same way we treat them now. We're one of the unique industries that as our industry evolved, we didn't change how we treat our team members, how we incentivize our team members to work, how we incentivize our team members to stay. Those things never changed. I mean, yeah, instead of a pension, which automotive never did pensions, we have a 401k. We still have, we're off Saturdays. Everybody's off Saturdays. That's why they all want to come to you on Saturday. It's just the things that are important to people aren't important to the people in the running of the automotive industry. And I think part of that comes from the average age of a shop owner is so high where those people remember those days in the good old days in the 70s. But they don't remember the good old days in the 70s where the cars needed new parts constantly. You can't go 100,000 miles on a transmission. So that's what I see. Our cars evolved. You can plug your car into the wall. You can literally charge your car, and we're still telling people like, we have vacation. I bet you have vacation because I can charge my car on the wall. So that's the thing is the evolution of cars didn't evolve our staffing model, Jay,
I You hit on some things there that I think are really interesting and in that there's still some bad shops out there, right? When I say that, not necessarily for the customer standpoint, which there still are, but more from the employee standpoint in that there's still plenty of shops that, hey, you work here a year, you'll get a year of vacation after that first year. And, I think that's one of those things where we have to adapt as an industry, like because of those competition that you talked about earlier, right? There are so many options for skilled labor right now that unless you're a little bit flexible and you're a little bit different, you're going to continue to struggle to find people. And I think the points you made, and I think COVID shined a light on this a lot where, you got to see your buddies staying home and you're still in the shop grinding every single day. And I think it what was already kind of a difference, it just shined a light on something that made it look incredibly different.
Well, and like nowadays, as a shop owner, you can say to any other business owner, man, you having trouble hiring? And they're like, yeah, it's terrible. That's not new for us at all. This
No.
problem started 4 or 5 years pre-COVID. It crept up on us. I opened in 2011, and I got to enjoy a little tiny part of where you put an ad out and like multiple people apply, just a little tiny bit of that. Like you said, during COVID, we were working. All of us were still working, and the rest of the world was off getting paid. We, as auto repair and auto body people, don't have college debt. We didn't get anything forgiven. So people that went to college got to stay home and get paid and then get some of their college debt forgiven. In the meantime, we're keeping their car moving. We're literally working for them while they're getting paid for free. And there is a resentment. I truly believe there's a resentment for that. And like you said, with other blue collar industries, I am not advocating for a union. I am quite the opposite of unions. Like, I do not support unions in any way. I live in Ohio, and unions have done a lot of damage here. If somebody wants to leave my automotive repair sector here in Canton, Ohio, and become an electrician, you can go to the electrician union, and they will pay you to go to school. They will turn you into an electrician and pay you to do it. You want to become a welder, the exact same thing. There's no hub for that. Now, the effect of the union, I'm not a huge fan. The attraction to their industry, where they're like, hey, we're going to pay you to learn a skilled trade that you can make a ton of money doing. And then when I interview a tech and they ask about training, because every tech asks about training, and I tell them, not only do I pay for the class, but I pay you hourly to take the class. And they look at me like, what? Like, you're actually
That's
going
so
to pay me an
foreign.
hourly rate? What do you mean? What do you mean, am I going to pay you? Yes, I'm going to ask you to do a job duty when you're home. Yeah, I'm going to pay you. It's just broken, Jay. It's so broken. And the saddest thing is, what do we do to fix it? How?
I so I'm curious to get your opinion on this.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of this is stemmed from shops just not making enough money, right? Because if you made enough money, you'd be able to afford to staff correctly. You'd be able to afford to offer the benefits you need to.
Oh,
But
man.
at the core, there's just not enough money to go around to support all of it currently.
And honestly, in the other blue collar industries, you see a tiny wink of this. You know, you call a plumber. Plumber's going to charge you $150 to come out. That's just what it costs. There's that one plumber that doesn't charge to come out, and he's booked a month out. And in automotive, an engine light, call around. You're going to get answers from free to $200. There's such a wide range. So no matter what we do as an industry, because it's a YouTube industry, I call it a YouTube industry because it's one of the industries that people actually consider YouTubing their way through it themselves. Okay. In a YouTube industry, people devalue what it costs. If there were a legal way for our industry to have a regulated floor where you have to charge this amount, just like selling cigarettes, there's a state minimum. If there were a state minimum labor rate that you had to achieve to be in business, that would help us tremendously. Because if I could raise my labor rate, I'm at 130 and change right now. If I could raise to like 170, 175, I could offer so much better benefits
It
and
changes the
have more.
game.
Yeah, but the problem is the shop up the street for me is 95 an hour, Jay. Sub 100. The AC shop 1 mile from me is $80 an hour. They charge $100 to evac and recharge a car if it's 134. That's including the refrigerant. I am not joking with that price. $100. So if I'm charging 170 an hour, I'm not going to have any cars because they can get it somewhere else. Look at Walmart, Target, Menards, all these big retailers. They match each other's price. You don't have Walmart charging $1 for a dozen eggs, because if they did, everyone would go there and they would lose money on that. But then Target would charge $1 and it races to the bottom. They don't play that game. And we always have to have those players that are like, you know what, last place is fine. I'll just stay here. It's fine.
And it's so frustrating because you're spot on, and I feel like our industry just isn't on the same page in that regard. And I don't know why you'd want to do that. And I think at times the parts distributors or the parts the parts stores do us a disservice because, hey, guess what? You want to diagnose your car? All you have to do is come here and we'll plug it in and we'll tell you everything that's wrong with it. And you end up devaluing the skill level of a good technician by doing that.
That I can't believe I'm actually going to say this. It would benefit our industry if there were a state or federal license required to not only work on cars, but to have an auto repair business. And that license, like in Canada, requires continuing education, recertification. And I'm not referring to ASE. ASE is a private for profit company. If you want to be a plumber, you need a plumber's license. If you want to cut hair, you need a license. You
But
literally need a license to cut somebody's hair. My haircut lady that has the license can't shave my face because she doesn't have the right license to shave. I'm dead serious. But she could open an auto repair shop tomorrow and work on cars. And there's no regulation. And I think if there were an expense that it took every year to keep your people certified and trained, I think that would help the public see this isn't grease monkeys. These people aren't just taking bolts out and putting bolts in. They're using their brain as much as
mm-hmm.
they're using their hands. They're not a laborer. They're a technician that has a unique set of skills that you don't have, and that's why you don't like new cars. You want old cars because of the diagnosis. Just yesterday, I was at a Boy Scout meeting. I'm very active with the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. Pardon me, and I was sitting with a group of leaders and we were talking about cars, and they asked me a question. Do you like new cars or old cars? I said, what do you mean like? Which do you prefer? And I'm like, I'm driving a 2023 that I just bought, a dream car. I love new cars. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, they're great. You figure them out, you replace one part, you move on. And they're like, well, I like old cars. And I'm like, you know why you like old cars? And they're like, well, yeah, I know why. And I'm like, you like it because every answer ends in rebuild something. Every answer. What's wrong with it? Oh, it needs plugs, wires, cap rotor. I'm going to rebuild the ignition system. I'm going to rebuild the fuel system. I'm going to rebuild the engine. I'm going to rebuild the front end. And on the newer cars, you replace a part. And I told them, you don't know how to figure it out. And they're like, yeah, that's the thing that the public hasn't put together. The reason they don't like these new fancy cars is because they don't understand how they work. You don't see people hesitating to use Siri.
Right.
Do they know how that works? It records what you say and figures out how you talk. You're okay with that because it makes life easier. But with cars that make life easier because you can put your Tesla on autopilot and take a nap, they like the old cars. You know what I'm saying, man? That's the
Yeah,
public is part of the disconnect because they don't see the technology in the cars that are real cool. That's hard as crap to figure out.
it is. And it still amazes me to this day that you could have zero experience, put a shingle out, and put brakes on somebody's family van. And something growing up in the industry, brakes were just always kind of like just doing pads and rotors, right? Like, and it didn't really think of it. But when you step back and think about how impactful that is, if somebody screws that up, like that is not good. And you can have a bunch of unqualified people just running around putting brakes on. You still have it, right? Like the people are
Well,
still doing them in the garages every
you
day.
remember car people just do, I do my own brakes. I do my own brakes, right? We had a customer, you need rear brakes. I do my own brakes. All right, do your own brakes. Guess what they don't do? They don't do their own brakes where you got to back the calipers up with a scanner. And they're like, "Can you believe that you have to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can not just believe it. I know how." And we ended up talking to him like, "Do you realize your car when you do an alignment, you need like a $400 calibration?" And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, all that cool steering fancy camera crap that you've got, that stuff's not magic. It needs calibrated, man. Like you have to tell the car you changed how it steers." And the guy said, "I'm driving a computer."
Bingo.
Yes, you've got it. And I told him, I said, basically, you know how to check things now. You no longer work on your own car. You can like rotate your tires. Yeah, your tire sensors are going to be in the wrong spot when you're done, but you can do it. Yeah, people just they try and DIY stuff. Have you paid attention on social YouTube of the people showing where they're taking EV powertrains and putting them in non-EV cars?
I've seen more and more, even like resto mods, like doing the older cars. Yeah.
That's the fun that we're seeing. That is the gearhead of the future, is somebody that's good at software and good at bolts that can take a Tesla powertrain and put it in a 43 Ford and drive around an electric 43 Ford.
I watched a video on Tim Allen doing that, and I can't recall what car he did it in, but it was honestly, I'm not like a huge EV guy, but like watching that, I was like, that's pretty badass. Like that's pretty cool.
That stuff in a 460 in a Miata. That's
Yeah.
exactly what that is. We put huge power in little cars. We make stuff fit. Um, and when we have people doing that, because when you're not old enough to remember when fuel injection was relatively new, but people were putting carbureted cars in fuel injected cars to make them easier, right? We haven't seen a ton of reverse engineering in the early stages of things. People now will take carbureted cars and put fuel injection systems in because it's been around for 50 years and 40 years. EV's new, and they're already taking and shoving it in stuff that's not EV. And when we have people doing that, that tells the world this isn't that hard.
Mm,
You see what I'm saying? That
I do.
subliminal message. This guy that I don't know stuffed a Tesla powertrain in a 54 Ford and got it working, so I can buy an electric car because I can work on it myself.
It
Is it true?
it
That's
is.
where I
It's
think a lot of that stems from and it's because people are searching for views and likes and followers and all that. So if that's interesting as anything, so they do it. The disadvantage is it makes people think they can work on their EV. And we're going to start as EVs get bigger and hybrids get bigger and bigger. You're going to see the news stories of them catching on fire, them exploding, people dying working on their cars. It's part of it, man.
I yeah, not looking forward to that part.
Exciting news! You now have more time to earn free t-shirts by referring your industry friends to WrenchWay. Here's how it works. Retrieve your referral code or link by logging into your WrenchWay account and going to your profile. Don't worry if you don't already have a WrenchWay account, you can create one for free. Then, share your code with your friends. Make sure those you refer enter in your referral code when they create their WrenchWay account so you get the credit. WrenchWay has 3 t-shirt designs up for grabs that include popular industry sayings like, waiter's gonna wait, make mechanics cool again, and fix what others can't. The more people you refer, the more t-shirts you can get. Offer ends June 30th, 2023. Click the link in the show notes to get started.
I will say this is where maybe there's a shift in how we treat people, right? Because you're seeing such a change in our industry in terms of technology and the way shops are run. This could be an opportunity for us to get maybe a little bit more on par with others. And something that we wanted to talk about today was flexibility and really the relationship between technician and management and really hopefully starting to see that evolve a little bit. I don't think you
Yeah.
see as many of the managers that are going out in the shop and just screaming their faces off every hour, and
Right.
I don't think you can anymore. Right? There's still shops out there that do it, and it's very frustrating. But I when we look at the relationship, and maybe that's a good parallel to what we're seeing with advancements in technology. Do you see that opening up opportunity for us to get our shops maybe on the right
I,
track as it relates to this?
well, with the shift in we need them more than they need us, we're also getting a perfectly timed generational shift. Because historically, the baby boomers have been the biggest business owners in the auto repair sector. That's just a stat, right?
Yeah.
And you would probably know this better than me from what I've seen. Gen X, my gen, has a very low representation in the auto repair sector for ownership. They actually have a very low representation in everything. There's not a lot of Gen X governors. There's not a lot of Gen X congressmen, senators, anything. They're just not. Gen X, our parents were boomers, so we work. You know what I mean? We don't work like a boomer, but we work. We helped create the internet. It's cool. So as we're going through this generational shift where we're starting to see the millennials start to open shops, okay? And then the young generation, Gen Z, whatever, the ones that don't really have a name yet, they're starting to become some part of the workforce. So that this is an opportunity for us to redefine the company employee relationship, because originally the the employee needed the company. Now the company needs the employee, and we don't want to go to a full swing. We want to have where the employee needs the company needs the employee, just like in a marriage. Both people do what they can to help the other person have a better experience. So if the business is doing what they can to make sure the employee's having the best experience, I, the example, I get to work, I tell each person I'm glad to see them today. I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad to see you today. Because I am. Because if they didn't, I wouldn't be very successful if I didn't have any techs or advisors. So I'm genuinely happy about that. When it's hot out, go buy 10 Gatorades. Give them Gatorades. When they need a day off, give them a day off. When you want a day off, you take one off. And then what they'll do to show the company, to make the company do better, is they'll go that extra mile. You know, they see something needs reorganized and they just take care of it for you. When they see a customer that you worked on their car 2 weeks later broke down and they're off, it's Saturday, they pull over and check on them and see if they're okay. You know, they put that little bit of, oh, what's the dedication into it as a career. And the thing we combat is those younger generations, they're taught to diversify their resume. They're taught to try as many different things. Don't try it in high school, try it in real life. You know, you could be a mechanic, you could be a plumber, you could be a car salesman, you could work at Home Depot, you could do whatever and just try all these things. And we're trying to drive loyalty so that we can all have those employees that work for you for 30 years, retire, and you get to have a retirement plaque on the wall. We all want that because that's easiest for us as business owners, to just know that we have a secure staff that's not going anywhere. But it's unrealistic to think it's going to work that way, because that's average person's only on a job 2 to 5 years nowadays, and they change. And we have to look at that as that's just part of how things work. While we have them, they need us, we need them. Show them you need them. Show them you appreciate them. And let them show you they appreciate you. And when we start to have that be not transactional, we have that be relational, where when somebody leaves your company, you actually still talk to them to make sure they're okay. You actually wish them a birthday because you care. Have a happy birthday, man. Not because they'll send you another employee. You do something where there's no benefit to you. Um, the there's no benefit to you except knowing that person is okay, knowing that person knows you care. When we start getting that level of empathy in asking people what they need instead of telling them what you're going to do, that's where we can start to solve that problem. Because you want an employee that is offered more money somewhere else or offered more benefits somewhere else, and the reason they stay is how you take care of them.
Mm.
Because if it's transactional from the business standpoint, it's going to be transactional from the employee standpoint. If I've got you here because I pay you and you do a job, that's a transaction. When something better comes along, that transaction math says it's better, they're gone.
So many great points there. And
sorry, man, it's what I do,
no,
Jay.
it is so cool to hear that, because it is so true. I remember growing up in a shop, and if I took off to go to a doctor's appointment, I would get ribbed like crazy, right? Like, what are you doing, part timer? You know, like that kind of
Right.
stuff. It's crazy looking back at how much pressure was on you to never miss work, right? Like to never be gone.
Dude, I want to give an example. This is real life, happened in my shop, okay? I'm 47. I'm Gen X. I'm kind of part boomer, part millennial, okay? I kind of like between those three generations, depending on the scenario, I have attributes of any of those generations. So a lot of my team knows I'm a driver. I go, I work. They've caught on to that. But they didn't catch on to the fact that if they need to take off work, take off work. Because when I need to take off work, I'm taking off work. And when you take off, I'm going to cover for you. Just like when I take off, you cover for me. And they didn't understand that, because they're like, these guys are stressing out. My two advisors have a lot of stuff going on at home. And what happened is one of my techs, his 90-day review is coming up, okay? On a Monday, I sat down with him to do his 90-day review, and I go to start talking to him, and he's just not there. He's just not there. And 2 weeks before, they had lost his mother-in-law. Been
Mm.
married over 20 years. His mother-in-law passed away. I asked him, what's going on? Because I'd noticed for the last 2 weeks he wasn't doing that good, and I understand it's your mother-in-law passed, but like, you got to pull your head out at some point, man. We're trying to help you. And I was going to talk to him about it. I had mentally prepared to be like, dude, I'm going to turn your benefits on, but like, I can't have you dragging us down. But when I talked to him, I realized something wasn't right. And I just stopped the 90 review and said, what's going on? And he said, my father-in-law is in the ICU.
Mm.
So what do you mean? He's not taking care of himself. His wife of 50 years passed away. They made the call to my wife today that she needs to get up there. I said, you're going home right now. He's like, no, no, we got a lot of cars. I said, come on. We stopped the meeting. I walked him out to the techs, and I have 3 techs total, and it's one of them. I said, hey, guys, Jeff's home family needs him. How can the work family support him so that he can go home and be with his home family? And they're like, we got it. We'll take care of your cars. He's like, all right. And I walked him up to the advisors. I'm like, hey, his home family needs him right now. Like, what can we do to help him? And they're like, we got it. He went home, and Monday night, his father-in-law passed away.
Oh.
He texted me. Now, in our team, we're very open, but for whatever reason, when something bad happens, our team members generally feel comfortable talking just to me, and they ask me to talk to the team, even though there's group chats. I don't know. It's fine. So he told me what's going on. I said, take the time you need. Tell me when you guys are hungry. We'll send you food to your house. Whatever we got to do. If you need your yard mowed, anything that you need to have happen that you don't have time for, just say the word and I'll either do it or find somebody to do it. He took Tuesday off. He took Wednesday off. He showed up Thursday on fire for work.
Yeah.
On fire. And I wasn't there Thursday morning, and I messaged in, like, how's he doing? They're like, he's a whole new person. So I sat down with him to do his 90-day review for Monday that we needed to do. And I said, how are you doing, Jeff? Sorry, I should be saying who he is. I said, how you doing? He said, doing good. And he told me in his own way that what he took away was that group of people were there to take care of him. And he realized that I understood his life wasn't having him conform to what I want to have happen in 90 days. He was giving his best, and that's all he can do. And that I realized that's okay, and I wasn't holding against him on his 90-day review. During the review, I sent him home. I didn't hold that against him. I saw that as understanding that's how life works. So instantly, my one advisor, the next day, he needed a day off, and he came to me like, hey, I need this day off to take care of some stuff at home. I said, got it, dude. I got you covered. Another guy, he's Rastafarian. In his household, birthdays hold the highest regard of every holiday of the entire year. He wanted a Friday off early at like 4 to celebrate his birthday with his wife. I found out his wife got off at noon, sent him home at noon. Now they get it. And as business owners, we got to show by example, tell them it's okay, show them it's okay, and make them do it. Make them embrace those benefits, Jay. And I don't mean to go on a soapbox like that. That story tells you, show them that you care. Let them take time off if they need time off. Don't hold it against them. Do any of these business owners that never take off, shame on you. Shame on you for not going and seeing your wife, seeing your friends, doing what you like. You'll be a better leader if you take some time off. Marathon runners practice for years to run 30 miles or whatever a marathon is. They don't do it every day. They charge up, and we've got to do that too, you know?
Man, again.
Does that touch on it, Jay?
Great.
Does that drive it home?
It does, because what you did there was read your employees a little bit, right? Like, they weren't completely forthright with what was going on at home, and maybe in past jobs. This is when I relate it to if that person had worked in a crappy shop before, right? They weren't comfortable going and talking to their manager about that, right? And that needs to change in our industry. We have to get out in front of that. And I think obviously in our industry, you've got to have people in the shop to do the work, to make the money, to be able to stay in business. But you also need to be a human, right? And I feel like there's so much of that missing in our industry, where we completely fail at that in so many cases. And by just sitting down and listening, truly listening. We talked about that before, right? The listening part, listening and picking up those cues. And I know even at my dad's shop, right? Like we had this scenario once where he had a tech that was a good tech that was going through some life issues, but my dad, instead of looking at that and saying, "Oh, he's struggling right now," his mind instantly went to, "We're going to fire him." And I'm like, "Dad, he's been a good tech. Like something's got to be going on at home, and something else, something outside of the shop has to be happening." Well, sits down with him, starts talking to him, finds out that he's going through a divorce, and it's like, that's the part we've got to get better at, is just treating them like humans, because it's they're really talented people, and there's a lot of really good technicians that are just good people and do that stuff, like stop at the side of the road and help people out. And when they come to us constantly and say, "Listen, these shops just don't listen to us. They don't hear us. We're just treated like a number." That's the kind of stuff we're talking about, right? Is like actually being happy for them when something happens good in their life, and like actually being sympathetic when something isn't going good in their life, and the ebbs and flows of life as a whole. We all go through them, and just being there as, like you say, work family. When you're a true work family, that makes all that happen.
Well, to have it blows my mind. I've had this conversation with other owners, and we're talking about where a lot of owners are, which is super stringent, no empathy, numbers, factory worker. Then the other end of the spectrum is where you're such a good friend with your employees that they don't respect you. Okay. And that's a lot of people's fears. I'm going to get too close. Never once did I say that you had to be friends with these people that work in your company. You don't have to be friends. You said the key word, human. You have to be human. Yes, you have to make money to stay in business, but you have to do that by having humans help you in a human scenario. Just like the people that bring their cars in, they're human too, and they have real human problems. You get a customer that's complaining about whatever's going on with their car and they're freaking out, and then they talk to you and they tell you that actually they found out that they've got sorry, they've got cancer, and there's some other underlying thing, right? And that's what's made the customer be extra mad. And we're understanding about that. Why aren't we understanding about that with our teammates? They can be dealing with a lot. We're currently going through a situation. I just shared one of my techs had his wife lost both parents in a 2.5 week time period. One of my advisors is dealing with a whole bunch of drama with his daughter, and CPS is only involved because of the daughter. Not he has a CPS comes through South. There's no problems, but he's got a massive problem. And then my other advisor's been dealing with a sick family member that just recently passed. I've got 3 people in my company with massive home problems that at any point I could have said it is easier for me to just terminate them and hire somebody else. But it's not. It's not. It might seem like an easy short-term solution, but being that the guy I just shared about parents, in-laws both passed away, what kind of loyalty does that guy have to me? During the 90-day, he told me currently his plan is to retire from my company. He's 2 months older than me. He's 47 years old. And he wants to retire from the company. And it's because he said, I know now that we can get through anything together. I gave him 2 days off. I didn't pay him for him, Jay. I didn't pay him for the 2 days. I just gave him 2 days, a day and a half, whatever. I gave him 2 days off, no pay, and he appreciates that I saved on my costs. I mean, if we want to make it transactional, it costs me less to operate that week, And finding that sweet spot in the middle that not only works for you, it works for your team, and that sweet spot can change because you might have some people that are a little more rigid, and they might not need a lot of that endearment. You might have some people that need to just vent. One of my advisors, we have a vent chat where when a customer makes you mad, you can just vent into this chat on our Auto Vitals chat. We have a chat just for that because he needs to get it out. Don't yell at the customer, yell at us. It's a safe place. Yell, man. It just depends on what everybody needs, and you have to be willing to flex the way that you want it into the way that helps your team be successful and renewable. And when they leave, because they're going to leave, you want them to have good things to say, because your team members are going to leave and they're going to go get a job at another shop working with other people that could work for you someday. How do you want them to talk about their time with you?
Boy, that's a good way of putting it.
Want to win cash while helping the industry? Check out our weekly game on WrenchWay Shop Talk called The Loneliest Number. Each week, we post short poll questions on Shop Talk about industry topics. Technicians who answer the questions will earn points to play the Loneliest Number game for a chance to win our $1,000 weekly prize. $500 will go to the lucky winner, and the other $500 will go to a local high school program of the winner's choice. Start playing now at wrenchway.com/shoptalk. Link is in the show notes.
I want to go back to something you had said earlier about when you went out to the shop during that time. You're going to be down a third of your shop, right? You're going to be down a tech in the shop, and having the other two step up and say, yeah, we got this. How did you create that? Like, what was it that really drove that?
So our first core value is growth, okay? And our growth core value, I purposely made that be our first one. Our honesty and growth, those two things, if you make growth where you look for a way to become 1% better every day, if you can do that every day of the year that you work, you'll be 200% better by the end of the year. Easy math. But on top of that, look for a way to make the people around you succeed. If you can give somebody 1% every day, okay, and there's 3 of them out there, you're giving each other 1% and you're getting 1%. You're getting 3% a day. At the end of the year, you're 600% of the technician you were. So we already have a culture where we look to grow the people around us. And we say, there's your 1%. Like, we actually say that. Yesterday, I was talking to one of my advisors and I gave him 1% on a life situation. It had nothing to do with work. And I looked at him, I said, there's your 1%. And he's like, all right, I'm going to try and find yours. And he saw it as a challenge. So when you're already trying to help the people around you grow, and then when something negative happens, you're used to lifting those people up as much as you can. So when something negative happens, it's your instinct to bring that person up. It's the instinct to lift them up to where they need to be. So we're already in an environment where we're helping each other on a regular basis, and that just leaked into the home world. And the same thing, I've had it countless times with other team members. It's how you act. It's what you say. You're leading by example. So when I came back from a super conference, an ATI super conference with a growth mindset, talked about 1%. I learned that from Darren Hardy, and I just started telling everybody, we're going to find 1% every day. And no one did it because it's Fred's new crazy idea. And then when I started saying, I got your 1%, there it is. Hey, there's your 1%. I got my 1%. And I started celebrating those 1%. And we started talking about that. Other people started to do it. Is that
the reinforcement
well?
of it? It does. And I don't see a lot of shops doing that, quite frankly. Bringing those ideas to the table and maybe communicating in the way that you do. I'm curious as to what you see with other shops, or maybe what you've heard from techs that come to work for you about that part, right? The communication side, and actually, having the ability to have a good conversation with their leader. I think the fact that they feel open to coming to you to share news that is difficult kind of shows your chops as a leader. I think that's a really, really important thing when you're in that position. And so, I'm curious, when you look at other shops or maybe see others that maybe you evaluate, where they fall short in that area. Is it because of a personality of somebody at that leadership level? Is it because of lack of training? Like, why is it that we see so many shops that just aren't at that level?
I think rephrase your question. Sorry.
So when I look at other shops that maybe aren't doing this, and the technicians are miserable, everybody's maybe not, it's not a great culture, right? Like,
Got it.
and a lot of it comes down to the fact that they can't communicate with their leadership team.
Right.
Why is that?
I see what you're saying. So I think the owners or the management aren't looking at the employee's perspective. So an important question that I like to ask, what's your favorite thing about working here? What makes you most satisfied about working here? And then what makes you most dissatisfied about working here? So management, ownership's always going to pay attention to what makes you dissatisfied because we're fixers and we fix broke stuff, and that's broke and I'm going to fix it because then it'll work, right? But they don't look at what makes them most satisfied. So my goal is to have everyone's answer be the people I work with. And currently that is the answer for 2 of the 5 people I have full time on my team. I want that to be all 5. And if it's the people you work with, if you create a culture that's almost a clan that of people working together, that is the mindset that's missing, Jay, is they're looking for what's broke so they can fix what's broke, but they're not looking for what works. And combined with that is the fear of failure. They're too afraid that their new idea is not going to work and they don't want to try it. And that happens on both sides. The ownership, the management can say, here's my good idea, but then they're scared to say anything because it might not work. All right, now it's squashed before it even tries. Or you tell everybody and everybody's like, oh, that's not going to work. Really? Because you've done that and it doesn't work? There's too much fear of failure. So, or I'm going to get in trouble because I didn't do it right. You know, failure is something we're afraid of. I was working on a way to contact customers before they're due for their next service so we can capture that returning maintenance work. And I made spreadsheets and handed them out to the advisors, and they sucked. It was terrible. We gained 0 appointments. We talked to some people. It was not effective, and that's okay. And I did it. I gave it to them. They didn't even make it through all of them. They're like, this sucks, man. And I was like, all right, tell me what sucks about it. And I asked them, and they told me what they didn't like. So then I went to my vendors that I use for my stuff and found a better system and presented it to them last week, and they're using it this week. And it's because I wasn't scared that it was going to not work. They weren't afraid to try it because they know if something's broke, I'm not going to beat them to death over it. And that's the thing, is there's too much fear guiding what we're doing, Jay. They're not concerned with what's working, and they're so afraid that something's not going to work. They're afraid to try new things. And I think those 2 things combined is what prevents owners from engaging their team and management from engaging their team, where their team feels comfortable coming to them with whatever. I had a guy, he's still with me, that he wanted to be a professional snowboarder. He could do it. Like, this guy can do a standing back flip, a standing front flip, a coin toss. He'll do it too. Be like, hey, do a backflip. Okay. He's just that guy. Parkour, free running, skateboarding, all of that. He's exactly what you have in your head. Tony Hawk, but he's 22. And he came to me and was like, hey, dude, like, I think I want to be a professional snowboarder. And I asked him why, and he told me why. And I said, okay, what's holding you back? And he's like, I don't even know where to start. And I was like, he's like, I just love doing it, but I don't even know how. And I was like, and it was during a one-on-one. He told me because he felt comfortable, and here's why he felt comfortable. I said, okay, let's look. Where's the amateurs do these, whatever they are, snowboarding events? And he didn't know.
Yeah.
So we went and looked, and then we were, he's like, I know that guy. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I've met him at the slopes. I said, you need to talk to him. And I encourage him. I said, you need to talk to the people that are on the road leading to where you're going and embrace it. And I said, so let's say this works and you become a professional snowboarder. What does that mean for me? He goes, I'm going to have to take 3 months off. And I said, okay, would you come back? And he goes, yeah. He goes, the most professional snowboarder in the world only works 3 months a year because there's only so much season. I said, which 3 months? You know which 3 months he wanted off, Jay? December, January, February. The slowest 3 months of the year. And I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you what, you're in the beginning of this, okay? I want you to pursue this. This is what's going to make you happy. I want you to go with it with all you got. And I said, there's only one stipulation. You make it on the professional snowboarder tour, I'm on your board, your hat, your jacket. I am your #1 sponsor. I need to be on everything you own. I said, as long as you're okay with that. He's like, oh, absolutely. So then he built he met these guys, snowboarded with them. The next summer, built indoor snowboarding practice gear where he could practice his balance and his slides. He did it for a whole summer. The next winter, went to go towards it. I don't want to do that anymore.
Wow.
Changed his mind because he's 20 at the time or 21 at the time. And now he wants to get into drifting. He bought an RX-8 and he's rebuilding a rotary motor. He's probably going to want to be a home remodeler in 2 years. I don't care. If I would have said he's going to be a snowboarder, I don't have a long-term plan with this guy, I'm offering him getting somebody else, I would have lost so much from this kid. And you've got to be an open enough person that when they tell you things that you don't want to hear, think about that. There's a 20-year-old kid that found something he loves, that it's cool to be on TV, to be on the Red Bull Tour or whatever, X Games, and he wanted to do that. So he came to me and told me, and the way I reacted and embraced it told him he could tell me anything. And because of that, I do believe he'll be with me for a very long time. I'm not going to say life because he's 22 and he could change his mind, but a good long time he's going to be with me, and he is the most positive person on my team. His job is to promote positivity in our team.
Man, that's good stuff. And when you talk about the number one thing, and I love how honest you were there with 2 out of the 5 saying that the most important thing or the best thing about working there is that they're surrounded by people they like, and you want that to be 100%. You want that to be 5 out of 5.
Yep.
I think that really, it takes it a different level in terms of looking at it, getting yourself out of the weeds and really looking at the puzzle pieces that you're putting together in a building, right? Because when you're putting those building blocks together and you want to make sure that everybody fits and that everybody's skills complement each other, and it just it really is a puzzle in terms of how you put it together. And I feel like the more intentional you are with that, the better off you're going to be in terms of the happiness of the team as a whole.
When those puzzle pieces change too, got to remember that.
Yeah, they
and
morph.
The picture on the box changes too. Don't forget that too. Yeah, but it's true, yeah. And you've got to be willing to adapt and evolve and change. Like we mentioned in the beginning, you've got to adapt how you train or how you treat your team, how you incentivize your team, and how you treat them as humans. Let's just say something catastrophic happened to my wife today. I'm not going to work tomorrow.
Right.
And I expect nobody to hold that against me. So why is that not a 2-direction street? And the other thing is, some people might be like, I'm still going to go to work because I want a distraction. Okay, that's how you are. That's not how everybody is. We've got to be aware. People are going to go, people are going to change, people are going to change their mind again. Generally, the ground level workers in a company live in today. They worry about what's happening today. What cars do I need to fix today? They might look at tomorrow, best case scenario next week, and that is all the further in the future they're looking when it comes to work. And the management and the leadership's job is to look at the future. You've got to look where you want to be and how can you get there, and make sure you've got your people going that direction. If they're not, redirect them. You don't have to terminate them. If someone's going the wrong way, just turn them around. Point them in the direction of success, and explain to them what you're doing. What you're doing is not lining up with our fundamentals and our goals. Help me understand why you're doing these things. And then they tell you, and then say, what can I do to help get you going towards success? We're going to succeed. I want you along for this. If you want to be a part of success, we've got to go this direction. How can we get there? And don't expect them at a full-out sprint to the bottom to just bounce and go the other way. They're going to have to slow down and turn around. And the same thing happens. You'll have team members that just spike up towards success. One of my advisors had an awesome idea yesterday that actually avoided a catastrophe that was going to happen Friday. And I loved it. And I told him, I said, thank you for doing that, man. Like, you avoided this, dude. Good job. And I high-fived him for doing his job. High-five them for doing their job. It feels good. A thing we learned at Super Conference a couple years ago, just give random high-fives out to people. COVID made that a little weird. But
More
still,
fist bump.
you can wave at people. You can say hi, good morning, or how are you today? And when you say how are you, listen for the answer. Don't just say it in passing. Do those things. We've got to be more human, man. And I think this is part of coming out of the COVID scaredness, generational shift, the shift of EVs. That's a whole nother thing we'll skip through. There's so much going on in our industry that this is our opportunity to redefine it with the retiring generation of shop owners, where we get the younger generation into these positions, and really make automotive a place people want to work because it's a good place to work. Not a place I'm going to work because it's what I know how to do and I've only got 12 years left. People want to work on cars. What a cool thing,
Yeah. I think that's something we forget about when you're in the day-to-day of a shop every day. Like, it is actually kind of a cool job. Like, you get to do some cool stuff, right? And you get to not sit behind a desk all day, which I sit behind a desk all day or travel or, whatever. And there are times where I'm like, man, it would just be great to be in the shop. Like, just like not sitting behind a desk, like anything but sitting behind a desk.
That is where hobbies come into play, my friend.
It is.
I picked up whittling wood. And as bizarre as that is, what happened is one of my Cub Scouts gave me a hatchet for Christmas. And I wanted to thank the kid. So I took the hatchet, and when I went camping, I found a piece of pine on a tree, and I chopped it off and made him this little wooden spoon like this big and gave it to him. And then I was like, that was fun. I just used what I had on me. Maybe I should get into this. And, we're fixers. Don't think for a second you're going to take and work on cars for 20 years and then go sit at a desk and feel good about what you do. You've got to find a way to fix something. And if you don't have an outlet of fixing, you're going to try and fix every problem in your shop, and you're going to treat it like a broke car. And that's not a broke car. It's not. You got to have something you can fix, somewhere you can let that out so you can focus on where you are, where you want to be, how you can get there, and how you can get everybody on board with that path. Standard meetings. You should be talking to each of your employees behind a closed door on a regular pattern where they know to expect it. You should be talking to your team at least once a week as a group where they know to expect it. And if you got to buy them lunch, you got to buy them lunch. Just sit down and talk. Let them talk to you. Give them a chance to talk to each other in front of you. It's when we expect them to work in a factory. That's the problem. It's an auto repair factory. Get in here, do your job, and go home. Sounds fun. Sign me up. You know what I mean? There's got to be something that makes them want to come into work besides fixing the car. Got to give them a reason you're different, Jay.
The human element, as we've talked about over the course of this podcast, has come up multiple times. I think it's not rocket science. It's not something that, you're going to be paying, your employees double of what the next shop is. It is truly getting to know them, understanding the things that are going on in their lives, celebrating the wins, being there for the losses, and really being a real person, right? And it sounds so cliche and at some level kind of a little corny, but it is something that our industry struggles with and has for several decades. And I do think we're getting a little bit better, and maybe that is a shift in the age of management, but it's a stressful job, and we understand the stresses that go into managing a shop and how hard that can be. But don't take it out on your employees. Listen to them, and don't, just treat them like humans. Treat them like your kids. Treat them like your spouse. Treat them like your parents. It's just, they're just
like your neighbor at your house.
Right.
Your neighbor, that's somebody, because with your kids and your wife, that's where you get the closeness. People get scared of closeness. They don't want to get too close. They don't want to be too vulnerable. And I mean, treat them like your neighbor. Treat them like the people you go to church with. Treat them like your acquaintances that, like, if something's not right, you check and make sure they're okay. You got to remember, right now, all my people are at work working because I'm at home recording a podcast with Jay. It's awesome, right? 12 hours from now at 9:41 p.m. tonight, they're all going to be doing whatever the heck they want at their houses, just like I'm going to be doing. You got to remember, man, they have people in their lives They have their other stressors. They have their other joys. They have their hobbies. They have their family. And they have all the same things you have. And when you're having a bad day and you go to work and you're like, man, like you tell everybody, man, I'm a little short today. I'm sorry. I mean, I've had those days. You go in and go, I had a really rough morning. I'm sorry if I'm short. And you expect them to be okay with that. That works the other way too. They just might, because they don't own the business, they might not walk into work and be like, hey, today I'm going to suck and that needs to be okay. Like they might not feel comfortable doing that. They really might. And Jay, you've had that where you've come in and told them you're not going to have a good
100%.
day. Right. Do they come in and tell you?
Hit or miss.
Let's make it real. It's hard, man. It's hard to be okay that someone's going to have a bad day. And having the three people with home drama happening, shove that in my face where I'm like, these guys are giving me all they got. Yeah, all they got's 50% of what they usually got, but that's all they got. I can't beat more out of them. I can't. I can scold them. I can write them up. I can do whatever I want. They're not going to try harder. They're doing everything they can. So you have to evaluate, is it worth getting through this hard time to get to the other side of it? Are you willing to be uncomfortable for this X amount of time, a bad day, a bad week, a bad month to get to the other side? And when you tell them you're going to have a bad day and they don't quit, that's them saying it's worth making it through this one bad day because I like this guy. And you've got to do that same thing. That's that human aspect. We all wake up in a bad mood every so often, and we take it out on everyone around us, and we try not to. And it happens to everyone. You've had it too. You know
100%. 100%. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I think kind of to summarize this entire thing, it is really, at a human element, just being able to understand people, read people, be able to communicate in a positive, proactive way. And a lot of times it's harder than it sounds, right? It is hard to be intentional about it, but
Sounds hard
I think,
too.
yeah, it does actually. Yeah. But I think you do it as good as anybody. And I said this at the top of the podcast, and I think this is a good point to conclude on, is that you're just one of the genuinely good people in the industry, and really, I think, want good things for our industry. You want to see the health of our industry move forward.
Yep.
And, I think that goes beyond Fix It with Fred. You're just doing so many good things out there. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you bring to the industry and respect what you do.
If you can find a way to help the world every day, and this just comes from my religious beliefs, I treat everyone like a friend unless they give me a reason not to. And I try and help people when they're in need. And when I'm in need, I hope somebody's there to help me. And if I'm never in need, that's fine. I teach my kids that. It's the golden rule. Treat them how you want to be treated. I want to be treated nicely, so I'm going to treat everybody nicely. And it pays off because I know I did everything I could, no matter what,
Yeah, love it, Fred. Thank you so
Thanks,
much
brother.
for joining us today. We always have great conversations, and I feel like
man.
this podcast was really good. So I really, really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jay. I appreciate it, dude.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.